We are going to look at a few issues and trends seen in academic libraries of the 21st century. To understand these issues, let's first take a very brief look at the role of academic libraries. There are almost 3,700 academic libraries in the United States, with each one reflecting the greater institution to which it belongs. Academic libraries range in size, from this one seen on the left, at Harvard, whose library system has over 17 million volumes, to the smaller academic library, seen on the right, at California's Cogswell Polytechnical College, which doesn't give an exact number of its holdings, but does say it is small but well stocked. Regardless of its size, each academic library has many responsibilities to the greater institution to which it belongs. Academic libraries are important components of higher learning institutions, including colleges, universities, and community colleges. Academic libraries are responsible for supporting students' and faculty members' needs, from providing supplemental material for the curriculum to being the go-to place for students' and faculty members' research needs. The emphasis of the university will determine how the library directs their resources and services. The academic library in the United States has certainly evolved since colonial times. The library at Harvard University represents not just the oldest academic library in the United States, but the oldest library of any kind in the country. Today, Harvard's library system, which is spread across several locations, holds the fourth largest amount of volumes for any type of library in the United States. However, looking back to the beginning of Harvard's library history, we see a much different picture. Colonial universities emphasized the learning of the classics and religious texts, making library collections small and almost superfluous. What resembles the academic library today began to take shape around the 1960s as universities shifted to focusing on research. Libraries had to expand. Technology, of course, also changed the academic library. The face of research changed because of the internet and the ease of access it gave to journals and to other people in their research. The academic librarian had to begin to consider also that the students walking through their doors were more well-versed at gathering information from the internet than from the library. Today, the contemporary academic library faces new issues as education and the world continue to rapidly change. We are going to further discuss 3 issues. First, Kevin will talk about the challenge academic libraries face due to the rising cost of journals and databases. Then Emily will talk about the growth of for-profit universities and what this means for academic libraries. Then I, Holly, will discuss the role academic libraries play in information literacy during this time of rapid, vast amounts of information.
The scholarly journal forms one of the most important parts of the academic library collection. Perhaps no other kind of library is so dependent on this particular resource. In many research fields, the most important scholarship is published in journals, and so it's imperative that academic libraries have these resources in their collections. For many years, journal content was purchased by libraries in the form of subscriptions to individual print format journals. While such subscriptions still exist, in recent years, academic libraries have moved increasingly to journals available in full-text online format, either from the publishers or aggregators such as EBSCO, JSTOR, or ProQuest. While most scholarly journals once were published by non-profit organizations, today most are published by a few major commercial publishers. The combination of profit motive and lack of competition have both contributed to rising journal prices. These publishers generally sell online journal licenses in the form of the big deal, in which they essentially bundle all their journals together and force libraries to purchase the entire package. Prices for these bundles have generally risen 7 to 10% each year. Whether distributed in print or full-text online formats, the rising cost of scholarly journals has created a financial crisis for many academic libraries. Between 1986 and 2004, journal costs for North American research libraries increased by 273%, while the U.S. Consumer Price Index rose by only 73% during those years. While most university libraries have faced budget cuts during this time, large commercial publishers have seen their profits increase significantly. In order to compensate for these rising costs, many university libraries are canceling subscriptions to print journals, while others are reducing or eliminating entirely their monograph purchases. So what's to be done? Two primary solutions are most commonly suggested: pay-per-view and open access. Under the pay-per-view approach, libraries would cancel the big deal licenses and let users or the library pay for individual articles as users need them. Users would probably object to paying for their own articles since they've been getting free access under the existing system. A system in which the library paid for user requests would be more attractive to those users, but might make budgeting more difficult for libraries. It is also possible that publishers would raise the cost of individual articles significantly if the market moved in that direction, thereby eliminating any advantage to this approach. The second approach involves the creation of open access repositories or journals in which content becomes freely available online to anyone who wishes to use it. There are two main strategies for achieving open access: self-archiving and open access journals. Self-archiving involves posting a copy of an article on a personal website or institutional digital repository, where it would exist alongside the actual published version of the article, available through a traditional journal. Open access journals, on the other hand, operate more like traditional print journals. The difference is that they charge a fee for publishing rather than for access. Some examples of open access journal publications include Biomed Central, the Public Library of Science, and PubMed Central. Other sites, such as the Directory of Open Access Journals, provide lists of such journals currently available. Some studies have shown that open access journals would result in significant cost savings for most institutions. Though there remains considerable opposition to open access within the publisher community, some librarians anticipate that it will transform the publishing business model within the next decade, and that eventually most journals will be published with this model.
As part of our presentation on issues and trends in academic libraries, I would like to focus on for-profit or proprietary schools because they belong to the fastest growing sector of higher education in the United States. The popularity of these schools stems from the state of the economy and its strain on the public. Proprietary schools promise their graduates will have better employment opportunities and thus greater earning power. Their students usually come from disadvantaged backgrounds, working full-time, and are single parents. Supporters of proprietary schools claim that they are a cost-effective way for people to obtain an education who have otherwise not been served well by traditional colleges. Very little is said in literature about how their libraries support their claim. So what is the problem? The most glaring issue that plagues academic libraries in proprietary schools is their administration's concept of what a library is. This profoundly affects the state of these libraries, and I will enumerate the following effects caused by this issue. First, there is a lack of understanding on what the purpose of an academic library is. The librarian or the services one can provide to support teaching and learning are not even considered. This is happening because usually the campus presidents for these schools don't have the academic qualifications to lead an educational institution. They come armed with an MBA or other managerial experience instead. They have no appreciation for scholarship and the research process. Secondly, there's a lack of library advocates in the organization. Decision makers do not always consult the librarian, and the library is not always integrated in the academic processes. This results in a limited budget because the library is only given enough resources to pass accreditation, such as those required by the health science profession. Third, there's a lack of properly credentialed librarians. or some schools only hire professionals on a part-time basis. Many administrators cannot even make the distinctions between types of librarians. They think that any librarian can step into the role without additional education or training. Even worse, some schools don't even hire librarians and only use staff members to run the library. Without a librarian, professional level reference is also unavailable. Often, the purchase of packaged digital resources is deemed sufficient. This over-reliance on digital resources results in limited print book and periodical collections. One school in Ohio does not even circulate their resources at all. Sometimes, small career colleges rely on public libraries without making a formal agreement with them, and the public library staff is unaware of their expectations. The public libraries also do not necessarily have the collections to support the proprietary school's curriculum. Because the library is not considered important, sometimes it is delegated to one room and does not have an adequate collection or sufficient study areas. It's also not unusual for the administration to assign other functions to the library space, such as standardized testing or staff meetings as shown in this picture. And lastly, there's a limited use of the school's website for library purposes. The website is usually geared to directing students to an admissions representative, and the library content is centrally controlled. Librarians can't always add links to library information on the website or the student portal without any permission. Academic libraries in for-profit schools suffer from lack of respect. Whereas traditional colleges consider libraries indispensable, the same is not always true for proprietary schools. The bottom line is these schools are businesses and therefore always have profit on the agenda. Although many students express contentment with the attention they get from these schools, mostly because of smaller teacher-to-student ratio, they often graduate with long-term debt. Studies have shown that these schools rely heavily on students paying with federal loans and grants, and without these, their businesses will not remain viable. What they need to realize is that investing in their academic libraries will improve the quality of education for their students and deserve the expenses it will incur. Administrators of these schools should also realize that the library and its staff is an integral part of the educational process and needs to be understood and invested in.
There exist different guidelines and ideas about information literacy within the academic library world. The definition is often blurred because of overlaps with other types of proficiencies, but the standards and guidelines set forth by the Association of College and Research Libraries are the most followed. According to ACRL, information literacy strives to make students know how to find, retrieve, analyze, and use information. Information literacy grew in the 1990s with the prominence of the Internet. Before this, libraries had a role often called bibliographic instruction, which is mostly about how to retrieve information and use the library. Now, information literacy is more important than ever because of data smog, a term that the ACRL uses to describe the abundance of information a student is faced with. Information literacy is a skill that will follow students into the rest of their lives, from the workplace to the home. In 1995, an ACRL survey said that 22% of academic libraries had some form of information literacy component. Today, nearly every academic library has someone on the staff delegated to teach information literacy. ACRL has guidelines to determine whether a student is proficient in information literacy, as well as other guides for librarians and faculty members. Students often think that they do not need instruction in information literacy. This is a misconception on their part. Students might assume that they are information literate because of their expertise using the computer and technology. However, they need to know what information is valuable and then how to use it. Many students will make whatever information they find work instead of working to find the necessary information. The ACRL Competency Standards for Higher Education has 5 standards that go much farther beyond Googling information. These standards include the ability to know what kind of information is needed, how to get the information effectively and efficiently, how to evaluate information, and how to use it for a specific purpose. The standards also say that students must know issues surrounding the use of information and its ethical usage. In addition to students who might oppose information literacy, many academic libraries face other challenges. Many are only given limited amounts of time to teach information literacy, and these teachings may only occur during an orientation or when some professors send their classes to the library for a single session, and these sessions are usually paired with basic library instruction. So the question is, how can academic libraries provide ongoing information literacy instruction to students? Decidedly, academic librarians must work together with professors to create an environment that embraces and spreads information literacy. Instructors can build information literacy requirements into assignments and arrange for their classes to go to the library for more instructional sessions. Librarians should insert information literacy into their services, such as at the reference desk. On a larger scale, institutions have created information literacy courses. Institutions can also create information literacy programs designed specifically for each major. A type of librarianship that brings together faculty and librarians has developed in recent years, the concept of a blended librarian, a librarian skilled in reference, technology, and the ability to teach these skills. This is one way academic librarians can develop information literacy programs with professors. As academic librarians find ways to make information literacy more important within their institutions, technology will continue to develop and bring about even more data smog. The importance of information literacy will continue to be clear. Information literacy is sure to continue to evolve.